Good morning and welcome to the Get Local podcast, where we bring to you all these local hidden gems in the upstate. And man, I am so excited about the wonderful guests that we have in the studio today. We are at 864 Sound, and you guys definitely want to reach out to them for all of your audio and video needs. They are fantastic. We love Brandon here at 864 Sound. So today in our studio, we have Stephanie. I'm going to say it wrong. Give me your last name again. I'm afraid. Szkolnicki. See, I can say it after she says it. She is from Southern Garden Solutions here in Greenville, South Carolina. And again, we're excited because you're bringing a new company that we haven't talked to before. So thank you for joining us in the studio today.
Thank you for having me.
You are welcome. Well, Stephanie, what we do is, like I said, we bring you these little small businesses, and we like to let our community know about who is here that maybe they've never heard about. So tell us a little bit about your company.
Yeah, so I'm an edible and ecological landscaping company, which means I help people learn how to grow their own vegetable crops, fruit crops, that kind of thing, as well as native plantings, kind of taking lawns and transforming them into gardens, coming up with solutions for your landscaping, drainage issues, irrigation issues, all that stuff. So I would say maybe like a more holistic landscaping company versus the normal, some shrubs and ornamentals.
Oh, I think that's fantastic. So, Stephanie, if in my home, I'm in real estate, and so a lot of times I work with new construction. So, you would be great to come into that type of scenario, right? For a builder and go in and kind of help them plant.
Yeah, I would love to. I mean, it would definitely bring a fresh perspective or a fresh eye or just something different to the building industry for sure.
Oh, my goodness. So, like in front of a home, what kind of things would you encourage someone to plant there?
It depends. It depends on whether it's in full sun, if it's in shade, if it's, part. Always encourage a lot of native plants or pollinators. And then if they're into like edible landscaping, then incorporate those as well, maybe perennial crops versus the annual vegetables. One of my favorites that would go well with like a builder landscaping or something like that would be blueberries. It's a 4-season interest. It gives you flowers in the spring, fruit in the summertime, foliage in the fall, and then when it's defoliated in the wintertime, the bark is very interesting.
Oh my gosh, I love that, because I'm sitting here thinking, I grew up in South Carolina, and my father was a farmer, so we had like 20 acres of farmland, and I'm thinking, okay, I don't want corn growing up in the front of my window.
Right.
So, but what you just described, I think would be beautiful there.
Yeah. And there's herbs that you can place in your front landscaping too. There's a lot more variety than just the typical builder kind of grade landscaping.
Oh my goodness. So what about unique vegetables or fruits? Is there anything that most people wouldn't think about planting that you've come up with and they say, oh my gosh, I love it now that they've planted it?
Unique vegetables. I mean, there's always different varieties that we're so used to just a specific variety because that's what the store offers. So there's definitely different varieties. One of my favorites that I tell everybody is like edible flowers. And one of my favorites is called nasturtium. It's a great, pest deterrent. It also has like this peppery flavor to it. So the flowers are even peppery. The leaf is peppery. So what I've done in the past, and my kids will just go out and pick some and put it on a sandwich, and we've got a little bit of a peppery flavor.
That is
right
wonderful.
there.
That's so interesting. Now, what about flowers for tea?
Flowers for tea. I mean, you have different types. You have lemon balm. You have mint. Obviously, you could do a lavender tea.
Wow.
There's all kinds of different mixes and match. You can just play with everything.
And what about, I was in the store the other day, I'm planting some elevated garden beds this year for the first time. And I, of course, was out checking out all of the different, vegetables and herbs, and I saw catnip.
Yes.
I mean, do you ever have people plant like catnip out front?
Sometimes
You have a lot of cats in your yard, right?
Well, it's a great mosquito deterrent.
Oh, I did not know that.
But it also it can kind of take over a spot too, kind of
Ah.
similar to mint. So it just depends on what you're wanting to do with it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was very surprised about when you said mint takeover. I was doing some research on some of the herbs, and they said certain herbs you want to keep in a pot for that reason because it will take over, correct?
Yes, yes. But
Um,
mint's fun to mow. I mean, it smells great when you're mowing.
oh
So
my gosh. So do you recommend, are you recommending different plants in place of grass or just in places where you would normally plant shrubbery and flowers, use that area?
so both.
Both.
There's recommendations for instead of having a lawn, let's plant more flowers or more vegetable beds and reduce maybe the lawn.
Ah.
Lawns just take up a lot of food. There's a lot of inputs into lawns,
Mm.
a lot of care, a lot of fertilizer, a lot of work, all that
Mm-hmm.
stuff. Whereas if you're landscaping for more of a native pollinator garden, there's obviously going to be upkeep with gardening,
Mm-hmm.
but there's reduction of like inputs of fertilizers or there's you can take back some time as well.
Mm-hmm.
So
Now, I would have a question for you. If you're going to take up more of your lawn and you're going to put flowers out there, in the last couple of years, I have a whole walkway section that I just filled with flowers. And one of the things that I was told to do, and I kind of did a little research on it, is you plant your spring flowers, and then you have another row is, where the summer flowers come up, and then you have your third row, which is kind of your fall flowers, so that you don't have this ugly bed, once those flowers are gone. Do you do that kind of thing in the yards as well?
um it depends. I mean, there's different plants that have different interests for different seasons.
Gotcha.
So, you might have a plant that's blooming in the spring, like you're talking
Mm-hmm.
about, then blooming in summer, and then blooming in fall. Or you might have one that blooms spring through summer. And
Ah.
so it's just taking those types of plants and planting them strategically so that you have something blooming consistently and
Mm-hmm.
it looks appealing to the eye too.
Oh my gosh, I think that's wonderful. Now, what about the raised bed gardenings? Do you help people with that as well?
I do. We will come in and do installations. We do consults first,
Mm-hmm.
designs, and then installations of raised beds gardens. And typically we go with the higher raised beds.
Mm-hmm.
We've just found that it's just easier for people to harvest, to just take care of, less weed pressure. So yeah, they're typically custom as well.
I believe, and I wonder if you would agree with me, that since COVID, I think more people have become interested in having gardens again. And so people are, especially if you live in the city and you don't have a huge piece of property, I think the raised beds or the planter gardens, I'm hearing a lot of people are doing
Hmm.
those. And I've even heard of hanging basket gardens. So
Yeah.
you can have some vegetables that'll hang. But I think since COVID, a lot of people have started moving and migrating in that direction. Would you agree with that?
It seems so, yeah.
Yeah.
There's definitely a huge amount of people that went to that when we had nothing else to do,
Yeah.
right? And there's been some that have kind of backed away from it now,
Hmm.
but it's still much higher than it was pre-COVID for
Yeah.
sure.
Well, and I think the groceries are so expensive right now that, I was telling my husband, we bought plants the other day and it was like $72 to buy plants. And he was like, I cannot believe we're buying $72 worth of plants that may die in our backyard. You know what I'm saying? But I was thinking to myself, well, hopefully we're going to save more than $72 at the grocery store, right?
So yes, with a proper setup, with proper care, you can save money long term.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not your first year gardening because you're learning.
Right.
Maybe not your second year because you're still learning. It takes a
Right.
good like 3 years typically to learn anything
Shh, don't
really.
tell my husband that.
But it's also, seasonal too. So just how are you going to plan to save that money? So tomatoes come in a flush, right?
Right.
So are you going to can them? Are you going to preserve them? Are you going to dry them? What are you going to
Mm-hmm.
do with them so that you can spread out that cost
Mm.
or savings?
Are you married, Stephanie?
I am not.
Okay, I think I'm gonna have a guest room, and we'll make it a permanent room for you, and you come to live with me. I said earlier, and I don't know if other people are challenged with this, but like I grew up on a farm, and I did a lot of farming as a child.
Hmm.
But my father would say, "Okay, go put the potatoes in the rows here, drop them so far apart, or go plant the bean bean seeds here. And what I realized is when I started doing the raised bed, I was like, all of a sudden, I didn't remember what could be planted together, what couldn't be planted together. When you started the seeds in the home. I mean, so I got on the almanac and I'm trying to read all this stuff and I'm reading articles on the internet. It is so confusing. So for beginners like myself, I mean, what do you suggest? Do you have like a beginner? Do you have something, a website or something that they can go to, or do you teach classes?
So I do a monthly newsletter, as well as I offer a coaching program, which is annual. So it's year long. We go through each season. We talk about whether somebody wants to start seeds or not. Some people don't.
Right.
And we go through what time things are planted and how to plant them. And raised beds are different than farming. The back of the seed packet is typically for farming.
Right.
And raised beds, we can do a little bit. We can play around with some of the spacing and stuff. So,
well, I think I'd be embarrassed if you saw my raised bed. So I'm not going to show you a picture before you leave, because this is my first year. But we got a lot of confusing information on that, to be honest with
Definitely.
you, because some places said use potting soil, some places said do this mix. I went into my local farmer's store and they gave me 5 different mixes to put all together, and I was like, oh my gosh, I need a pickup truck to haul all this stuff home, and then what percentage do I put in there? It was really confusing, but for us, we wanted to kind of get back to eating healthier fruits and vegetables. And I think when you grow them yourself, you don't have all those chemicals, right?
Right. You know what the inputs are. You know what you're putting into your plant. The only thing I would say with that is, where did you buy your plants from and how did they grow them? So then you know exactly what's in the plant.
Gotcha. Now, for those people who are interested in beginning, you mentioned organic earlier. So
Yes.
can you kind of talk a little bit? Maybe people don't know that are listening. What is the difference between just a regular vegetable and an organic vegetable garden?
Organic has become so confusing because there's certain things that are allowed that are, that maybe some people would not say, I want that in my food. Organic for me in a backyard means I know where the seed came from. I know where the plant started, if you're buying starts, and then I know what inputs I'm putting into the ground where they're growing.
Gotcha.
And it just means that I'm not using man-made fertilizers typically.
Are you using the manures? Is that what you're doing?
So there's different ones. There's compost, obviously. And then I'll use fertilizer like fish and kelp emulsion. There's also vegan fertilizers too. It's just a matter of reading labels and seeing what actually is in them. And then, if you really want to get into like super organic down the rabbit hole, you start looking at those companies and seeing where did they come from, how did they make these things, that kind of stuff. So
See, it's so much to learn.
It is a lot.
So when you mentioned earlier, someone can hire, do they hire you for the coaching program, for the
Yes.
year-long program?
Yep.
Okay. So do you mind sharing the cost on that? What does it cost to hire you for a year? Because I think I need to hire you for a year.
Yeah. So the annual rate is about $3,000 and
Okay.
it's twice a month. We meet at your garden typically.
Gotcha.
And it's very hands-on. We go through your garden, what's in your soil, what your issues are, what you want to grow. Everything's kind of individualized for you as the grower.
But you would come in and you would tell me before I built my raised bed or before I planted in my yard, you would I would assume, look at the soil. You would tell me this would grow good here. This is what you need your mix to be. Because I'm so confused with my raised bed garden soil.
Yeah. So that's the first thing I usually start with if somebody already has a garden, is I'll do a soil test through Clemson.
Yeah.
And that just gives me a good base of where we need to go as with a pH, or where we need to go with fertilizers, organic fertilizers. Let's just say that. So yeah, we start there as the very beginning and then go from there.
See, and to me, I know $3,000, some people may say, oh, that's a lot. But for me, you probably are jump starting someone, right? So you said earlier, like my raised bed garden, I really believe it's going to be 3 years. I really do, because we bought these plants and there's some of them already dead.
Yeah.
Because, when I was reading online, it said start them out in the home. You keep them in there for a couple of weeks. You wait for this date. I'm looking at the Farmer's Almanac. Well, I'm moving them this weekend, but I'm like, some of them are already dead,
Yeah.
So, but you would really, I think you'd save money by having someone come in and jumpstart how quickly you're going to be able to grow. Would you agree? Your program does that?
Yes. So you're not having to read through all the materials that's available, and then think about your zone, what zone we're in, and what plants do well. And then, you learn when we get to summer season, what are the pests, what are the diseases, what are the
Yes.
signs, how do I harvest this? It just reduces some time, and then also, again, it saves you some money as well.
Yeah. Oh, now see, I'm afraid of insects now because I haven't read any. I just know they're coming. Everything I've read said insects are coming, but I'm like, okay, which ones and how do I get rid of them without killing my plants again? So
Yeah.
I can just tell that I'm going to read everything this year. I'm probably going to kill half of or more of what I have, and then I'll be starting over again next year. So,
But that's also gardening.
yeah.
So if you're not killing something, you're not gardening, really.
Yay, I'm a gardener.
There you go.
I've already killed some plants. I'm
You're
a
learning
great
from
gardener.
that,
Well, we had decided, we were one of those gardeners where we decided we'll get the plants this year.
Yeah.
Starting with the
That's a
seeds
good
was
one to
kind of
go
a
with.
little overwhelming for us. Because we have this whole packet and we have this small little they're all elevated raised beds. And so we were thinking, let's just start with a little bit. And then when I got all these plants, I was like, oh, we want this vegetable and this vegetable. And they was like, now how do we plant them? And what do we plant beside it? And now they're saying marigolds. And I was like, I don't even know what a marigold is. So I'm trying to find some marigolds that's supposed to help with insects, right?
You'll have to wait another month or so.
Oh,
before
okay,
they're
thank
out.
you.
They're a warm season flower.
See, I've been looking at every store. I'm like, where's the marigolds? I
Not
can't
yet.
find them.
The flower that you could plant right now would probably be like violas and pansies and snapdragons. to
Gotcha.
plant
Okay, so
in
that's why they're out there with the vegetables when I was shopping.
Yeah.
All right, so for what would we look for? You said earlier if you're going to do organic, you really want to kind of see where you're buying your plants from, if you're going to buy plants, kind of how they're raising them. So do you go into your local farmers exchange or wherever you're buying your plants and ask those type of questions?
Yes. You would ask where they get them from. Like local nurseries and stuff. Ask them where these plants came from and if they know how they were grown. I'll be honest, organic certification can be expensive. So they might not say they're organic certified, but they've been raised organically. If
Gotcha.
that makes sense.
Yes.
And that's perfectly fine. It just saves somebody, the grower, a lot of expense not to have that certification on theirs.
Are they more tender plants? Is there special care that you have to take with organic plants, or is it really just the same?
Well, not really, no, because you can have organic hybrids, which are hybrid, but I don't know how far we want to go down this rabbit hole, but no, let's just say no, not typically.
Well, and I did do a lot of research at one time on organic foods in the grocery store because I was trying to eat healthier. And from what I read, you have to be really careful because like what you're explaining when you went into the store, just because it said organic did not mean it only had to be a certain percentage of organically grown to be labeled as organic in the grocery store. So you really, if you're trying to eat organic food in the stores, you do need to do your research, I think.
Yes.
Because it's very confusing.
Yes. There's just label and marketing that can be tricky.
Yeah. So I am excited about growing my own vegetables. I think it's going to be really cool this year. I have a blackberry bush from last year, and I realized they don't produce the first year, which was extremely disappointing because I think I had like 2 berries. And then the second year, I got much more than that. And then last year, I was in love with the amount of blackberries I got. So this year, I bought a blueberry bush and a raspberry bush. And I realized you can kind of plant them close to each other. But see, that's another thing I was reading on that. It's like you can't put them too close, but you can kind of put them close and they'll
Do you have one blueberry bush or 2?
One. Do I need 2?
You need 2.
I'm going back. I'm making some notes. See?
But a different variety.
A different variety. Okay.
So they'll cross-pollinate.
The same
and you'll
thing for
get more-
raspberries?
No.
No?
So just those blueberries would prefer 2. You'll get more berries that
Now,
way.
see, they should have told me that when I checked out. They could have made more money. 2 blueberry
Well, sometimes
bushes.
they think that you know what you're doing.
They
They don't ask.
They should have They should have told. I walked in dressed like this when I bought my vegetables.
Are you really a gardener?
That's right. They probably thought I was buying it from my parents or something who were too old and couldn't come to this store. But no, I'm experimenting. So I'm also trying to talk my husband into chickens, which I have heard that a lot of people who are doing fruits and vegetables are actually bringing chickens in to help fertilize. They're putting the little walkways around the gardens. Is that anything you recommend?
That can be, yeah. But chicken manure is considered hot, so it can burn plants.
Oh my
So
goodness.
so you would want to compost it down for a little while and then you can add it in. Rabbits, I mean, if you want to get into
Hmm.
rabbits, you can
Mm.
use that right away.
Well, they're not
So
allowed. My husband might let me get a rabbit. He keeps telling me no to the chickens. So he's like, we're not getting chickens. So maybe a rabbit.
there you
I might
go.
look at, do you need two rabbits? I guess you need two rabbits.
I mean, it depends on how much manure you
There
want.
you go.
There's people who are raising rabbits for meat.
Yeah.
And so they'll use the manure from that in their gardens.
Oh, I gotcha. All right. Well, listeners, I'm telling you, you need to give Stephanie a call if you are trying to do any gardening, because I can tell right now I am in a hot mess. So I'm probably going to have to hire you before you leave here today. Well, tell me how you got your company started.
Um, all things lead back to mom. So
Oh,
my mom actually sent me like a link for a business kind of coaching thing. And I was like, that sounds like me. And so I went
oh.
for it and it just kind of multiplied from there and I've gotten certifications since then and um, still studying as a horticulturist. So
Oh my goodness.
yeah.
So how long ago did you get your certifications? When did you start the business?
I started it the end of 2020.
Oh,
Yeah, and so the first certification was obviously that year, and then I've recently, um, within the past year, got a permaculture design
oh
certification.
my
Two of
goodness.
those actually, and then some other certifications just here and there. So,
So is it just you? You do it by yourself or you have a team?
currently, I am pretty much on my own as far as consults, designs, installations. I have a team.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's fantastic. So if you're going out twice a month to someone's home, I'm sure you probably have a limited number of customers right now.
Not really. I
Not
mean,
really. So call Stephanie, get
yeah.
on the list.
It's like I'll fit them in,
Yeah, you'll fit them
like
in.
I do. I've got a few clients right now that started this year already, and it's raining today. So it's like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, we had a couple scheduled. Now let's see where we can fit them in. So it's
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of like I move my schedule around for clients who really want to grow and learn how,
Mm-hmm.
especially their first year.
So what about the lawns? If someone wanted to get like the lawn, I love that idea. My husband would be happy because he would have less grass to cut.
Right.
Right. I'm still in my mind, I'm picturing this dead area. So you'd have to really walk me through that. But, if someone wanted to design their lawn, what's the best time to call you in to start that? Would it be in the spring or do you do it all year long?
Spring or fall,
Spring or
really.
fall?
Yeah. Summertime, it can get a little hot for plants. We could still do it. It just requires more watering to have them established and not be so stressed out.
Mm,
Plants get stressed like we do. So,
right.
spring or fall is typically what I would recommend, but we can also do summertime, especially like, even starting in January and February, having that plan and getting on my schedule for
Hmm.
installations and stuff, like that's a better time than calling in April because now I've
Right.
already had those other people that have, been waiting and now it's time for those installations.
Gotcha. Now, if someone has like a large area of land, and maybe they don't want to farm that many fruits and vegetables. What do you recommend in that case?
So, it kind of depends on use. What do
Mm-hmm.
they want to do with that land? They could rewild it, which means allowing, trees and shrubs to come back in and grow back up. There's strategic planning of like it's permaculture design where it's canopy and then shrub layers and you just keep
Oh,
going down. And so it becomes like a food forest.
gotcha.
So there's food forest options too, where you're not having to really farm it per se. You do have
Mm-hmm.
some care, obviously, but not mowing acres of fields or having to you do have some input, let's just say
Mm-hmm.
that. But it's not as much as like mowing.
Now, I met a gentleman one time. I think he's called an arborist.
Mm-hmm.
He worked with trees
Yep.
and restoration of trees, or helping you to choose which trees to save in your yard. Do you work with them?
Yeah, so if I were to do any type of tree work, it would be with an arborist,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And I had never met an arborist before. Normally if you want to cut down a tree, you just, I call
Call
the
it
tree guy,
tree
right? And they would
service,
just come
right?
and just chopping down trees. But I met this arborist and we were wanting to remove some trees and he came out and he said, we try to save as many trees as we can for the habitation of the animals, of
Yep.
course, and just for the land.
Yep.
Because you talked about irrigation earlier. A lot of people don't realize when you take a tree down and you get the roots up, all of a sudden you may have this huge wash and drainage in your yard. And so it was really awesome to have somebody come out and kind of point out, don't want to take this one and this is why. So I thought it was very interesting. And if you're doing like what you said with just natural growth. And I think a lot of our animals, because of so much build, are running out
Yes.
of habitat. So
Yes.
I think that's fantastic if somebody has a larger piece of property.
Well, even smaller pieces of property can be designed to, in a way, rewild as well. Like, that's been kind of my big push, is more like urban permaculture. Like, how do we do this in our backyard? But also, the big thing, like you're saying, I just don't want a dead spot. How do
Yeah.
we make it aesthetically pleasing, but also
Yes.
functional at the same time?
Yes. Do you use a lot of rocks and stone, or is it just
It
really?
depends. It depends on what we're doing with the rocks and stone. If we're creating a dry creek bed where water washes when it rains, then yeah, we'll use some stone. Or if there's a patio or something like that where we want that water to permeate, stone's better than the bricks and mortar. So it's a depend. It
Yeah.
depends.
And I would think if you have like an area that maybe runs into a creek and maybe you don't want to necessarily harvest like blackberries or something that would grow on a vine, that might be a good place to place those type of fruits and vegetables. Maybe you're not going to harvest them, but maybe you're planting them there for the animals. Is that something that would be good?
Yeah, you can. There's also there's all kinds of pressure from animals too. So there's creating hedges that feeds them, but can also feed you. So yeah, there's no reason why you couldn't plant for animals as
So if
well.
someone just loved out wild animals, that's a great way. I mean, you don't want wild animals.
Right.
You got,
Wait,
if you're
what
going to
kind
plant
of
some
animals are we talking about?
if you're planting some blackberries, you're probably going to have some snakes down there. But
Yeah.
but if you're
Like-
not playing in that area,
Right. Like the biggest one that I hear is deer. Deer.
Yeah.
So how do we plant to provide for them, but also provide for us so that they don't come in and take our stuff? And sometimes we have to do enclosures, but try to do as much natural as possible.
And I did have a question too about pets. So if someone has cats or dogs, what do you recommend for that? Because obviously that's why I'm doing elevated,
Right.
because my puppies love to dig. And so I didn't want to put fences around that area because it's not aesthetically pretty.
Yeah.
But how do you, if you're going to do all that planning, how do you keep your animals out? Or is there a way to keep them out?
It depends. Again, it depends.
Yeah.
It depends on the animal.
Yeah.
Is the animal going to be likely to jump up in there? That might call for some type of enclosure
Gotcha.
on just a raised bed. Cats, if you have neighborhood cats, that's a hard one because they
Yeah.
can jump. So,
But you're going to make sure we're not planting it, because a lot of plants are poisonous. Even vegetables could be poisonous to your dog or cat, right?
Yes.
So you would advise on that if they had pets.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I think this is so interesting, and I hope that our listeners has found a lot of good information from you today.
Hopefully.
tell me who should call you, who should get in touch with you.
Anybody who wants to grow, like learn how to grow, or they want to transform their yard into more of a native friendly, pollinator friendly. Even if they have like some drain issues, we can do rain gardens to help with the water flow and that kind of stuff. So it's kind of a little wide variety there, but
Yeah.
more holistic, more natural kind of landscaping.
Well, tell our listeners, how can they find you?
So I can be found on Instagram and Facebook at Southern Garden Solutions. And then my website is www.southerngardensoul.com.
Okay, fantastic. So now you said, do you do classes, you said?
I do. Well, I'm not offering classes right now. I maybe next year, just
Okay.
time wise for me. I have 3 kids, so they take up quite a bit of time as well. But hopefully next year I'll do more group classes. I have spoke at some events and stuff. So there are those opportunities that
Okay. Well, I would think like your homeschool moms who are always looking to talk about because they garden a lot. I
I
think
used to
those would
be
be
one.
groups. Oh, you used to be one. So, what about church groups or women's groups that want to, have someone come out and speak? Do you go out and speak? I think your information is just so interesting.
I do. All they have to do is reach out,
Okay.
and then make sure that I can schedule it
Yeah.
and fit into the schedule. Yeah.
Well, I think that would be fantastic. Well, like I said, I was going to bring you. Now you've got 3 kids. I don't have room for you and 3 kids at my home, but I would absolutely love to hire you.
You can do twice a week.
Twice
though,
a week.
right?
There you go. Well, I hope you guys will reach out to Stephanie. I think what you're doing, you're the only coach I have ever talked to that does this. And
Okay.
I just think it is fantastic. And I know I don't want to wait 3 years. So that's like $1,000 a year if I'm looking at it. And I'm gonna probably blow $1,000 this year trying to do this on my own. So I think that is a very reasonable price. Your knowledge just seems to be way above where I'll never be there, Stephanie.
You will. You will.
I need my father. He's passed now. I need my father to say, plant this here, plant this there. I did great at that when I was a
but
kid.
who helped him get there, right?
Yeah, that's true.
And even me, I look at some people that they definitely know more than I do.
Yeah.
And so I read their books or I talk to them and that kind of
Yeah.
stuff. So it's just knowledge that's just passed down.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
But I don't want to wait 3 years, Stephanie. I
No.
want some fruit and vegetables this year.
Now.
If I'm not doing something right, I mean, you said I was a gardener because I'm killing things. Well, I might be a really good gardener before this
When
year
you're killing
is
something,
over.
you're learning something, right?
That's true. Well, I'm going to ask you the fun question before I let you go.
Okay.
We always ask our guests when they come in, just something kind of out of the ordinary. But what I wanted to ask you is if you had a superpower, if you could choose any superpower in the world, what would it be and why?
Flying.
Flying. So many people say flying. Why?
Oh man, it would just feel freeing.
Free.
Yeah, I think it would just be cool to just be like free in the air.
Yeah.
I used to jump on the trampoline a lot as a kid and do backflips and front flips and all that stuff. And just that feeling of just being suspended in air just felt really cool. So I can
Yeah.
only imagine flying above, like even the clouds and stuff would be just super cool.
Yeah,
So,
how awesome.
yeah.
Well, thank you for sharing that personal question with us, the answer to that question. And
Well, now I want to ask you, what would be your superpower?
I always say, probably, I don't know. Nobody's asked me. Now I have to really think. So you put me on the spot. Probably flying, just because I go
Yeah.
so many places, and I would like the speed of getting there.
Oh, okay. No
And the Greenville
traffic, just
traffic,
go.
yeah, the Greenville traffic is
Yes.
killing me. Once you hit 14 coming from the Spartanburg area, man, you're going to be sitting for a while. So,
Yes.
so probably flying, I think. Well, thank you for asking me that question. That was pretty
Yeah.
awesome. So, well, guys, I'm glad y'all joined us on the Get Local podcast. We love to feature these small and medium and large businesses that are locally owned here in the upstate. I hope you guys, if you own a business, that you'll reach out to me. If you're a resident in the upstate, man, did y'all know about Stephanie? I didn't until she called me. And so I hope that you're going to share this podcast, tell your friends, and best of all, call her and let her be your coach. I'm telling you, raising your own vegetables is amazing and you will not regret it. I also want to give a shout out to 864 Sound. We could not do this podcast without them. Brandon is amazing. You're going to see a fantastic podcast each and every week from him. He does original music, music production, sound design, voiceovers, podcasting, audio repair, mixing and mastering, and live sound. Brandon Higginbotham is the owner, and they're over here on Sweetbriar Road in Greenville. Reach out to Get Local. Oh, and by the way, we do have some new B2B and B2C networking groups that are launching. So reach out to me, Joanne Fowler, 803-504-1898, and get some information and join one of those groups. Join us on the next podcast. Thank you for following us, listeners. We love you. Bye.